Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking behind the scenes of AWS Glue
Oh, okay.
with a research paper written by the AWS Glue team themselves.
Wow.
Yeah, it was published in late 2023, and it's just fascinating.
Cool.
It's a look at how this serverless data integration service came to be.
I mean, it's not just a dry technical manual, is
Uh-huh.
it?
Yeah.
It's a story of innovation,
Yeah,
problem solving, and adapting to the ever-changing world of data.
that's exactly right. So think of this deep dive as your shortcut
Okay.
to understanding AWS Glue.
All right.
What problems was it built to solve?
Yeah.
What makes it tick? And what's in it for you?
So let's start with the problem that AWS Glue was designed to address,
Okay.
and that is the growing complexity of data integration in the cloud.
Right.
Now, back when Glue was first conceived in 2016,
Sure.
the cloud was still relatively new territory for many companies.
Sure.
You had this explosion of different data sources and formats, from databases to data lakes to streaming data, and no easy way to connect them all.
It was like a data tower of Babel, right?
Exactly.
Everyone's speaking a different language,
Uh-huh.
making it impossible to collaborate effectively.
Exactly. And traditional ETL tools just weren't cutting it.
Right.
They were too rigid, too hard to scale in this new cloud environment.
So AWS Glue was designed to be the universal translator,
Yes,
the bridge between all these different data silos.
that's right.
But as the paper points out,
Yeah,
ETL is a long-tail problem.
it is.
There's no one-size-fits-all solution because everyone's data is different.
Right, so that's where Glue's guiding principles come in.
Okay.
And the first one is all about giving users self-service escape valves.
Okay.
In other words,
Yeah.
they knew that no matter how powerful Glue became,
Yeah.
there would always be those unique situations where you
Right.
need to get your hands dirty and write some custom code.
So it's not just a black box.
Yeah.
They give you the tools to tweak things under the hood if
Yeah.
needed. That's reassuring for anyone who's ever felt trapped by a rigid tool.
Absolutely. And the second principle is descriptive, not prescriptive.
Okay.
Glue doesn't force you to standardize your data up front.
Right.
You can bring your messy real-world data as it is and work with it incrementally.
That's a huge time saver.
It is.
No more spending hours cleaning data before you can even start analyzing it.
Exactly. It's about adapting to the data,
Right.
not forcing it to conform to some idealized model.
Okay, so it's flexible
Uh-huh.
and user-friendly.
Yeah.
What's the third principle?
Minimize undifferentiated work.
Okay.
This is where serverless architecture comes in.
Right.
Glue takes care of all the infrastructure management,
Right.
provisioning servers, scaling resources, handling failures,
Yeah.
so you can focus on what matters, the data itself.
It's like having a personal data assistant
Yeah?
that takes care of all the tedious tasks so you can be more productive.
That's a great analogy. And this serverless foundation has really been key to Glue's success and its ability to evolve over time.
Okay, so we've got the why behind AWS Glue.
Yeah.
Now let's peek under the hood and see how it actually works.
Sure.
The paper gives us a nice overview of Glue's architecture.
Yeah.
So there's Glue Studio,
Yeah.
the visual interface for creating and managing your data pipelines.
Yes, it's like a drag and drop canvas
Cool.
where you can piece together different data transformations and operations.
So even if you're not a coding whiz,
Right.
you can still build sophisticated data pipelines.
You can.
Pretty cool.
Absolutely. And behind the scenes, there's the Glue ETL runtime,
Right.
which is the engine that executes those pipelines.
Okay.
It includes all the Spark packages and Glue-specific libraries that do the heavy lifting.
Now, Spark is a powerful open source framework
Yes.
for distributed data processing, right?
Exactly. It's the industry standard for large-scale data analysis.
Okay.
And Glue leverages Spark's capabilities to handle those massive data sets.
Right.
You find in the data lakes and data warehouses.
Okay, so Glue Studio is the control panel.
Uh-huh.
The ETL runtime is the engine.
Yes.
And all of this runs on a serverless compute backend,
Right.
which means we don't have to worry about managing any infrastructure.
Precisely. And then there's the Glue data catalog,
Okay.
which is like a central repository for all your metadata,
Right.
information about your data, like schemas, data locations, and partitioning information.
So it's like a data map,
Uh-huh.
helping you navigate and understand your vast data landscape.
Exactly. And we can't forget the Glue crawlers.
Right.
Those little data bots that scurry around your data lake,
Yeah.
automatically discovering schemas and populating the data catalog.
It's like having a team of data librarians
Yeah.
working tirelessly behind the scenes to organize your information.
I love that analogy. But let's get into the nitty-gritty
Oh.
of how Glue actually handles your data.
Right.
One of the most innovative aspects of Glue
Yeah.
is its use of dynamic frames.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Tell me more about what dynamic frames are and why they matter to me.
So think of them as a more flexible and efficient way to represent data,
Okay.
especially when you don't have a clear schema defined up front.
Right.
You see traditional data structures,
Mhm.
like Spark data frames, rely on rows,
Okay.
these structured arrays that represent each data point.
Yeah.
To process them, Spark needs a schema,
Right.
a blueprint of what the data looks like.
So it needs to know what columns are there and what type of data each column contains.
That's right.
Like, is it text, a number, a date, etc.?
Exactly. And that can be a bottleneck.
Oh, really?
With traditional methods, Spark often has to do a full scan of your data
Yeah.
just to figure out the schema,
Okay.
which can take a lot of time, especially with large data sets.
So you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs, waiting for Spark to finish reading the data,
Right.
just so it can start doing the actual work you want it to do.
Right, and that's where dynamic frames come in.
Okay.
They bypass that initial schema inference step, allowing Glue to start processing data immediately.
Okay.
Even if it's messy and doesn't have a predefined structure,
Okay, that sounds promising.
it is.
But how do they actually work? What's the magic behind them?
Instead of rows,
Yeah.
dynamic frames use something called dynamic records.
Okay.
These are special because they embed the schema information within each record.
Wow.
It's like each piece of data carries its own little ID card
Uh-huh.
saying, hey, this is what I am and how I'm structured.
So there's no need for a global schema up front.
That's right.
Spark can just start processing each record as it encounters it.
Exactly. It only computes a global schema when absolutely necessary, like
Yeah.
when converting the data to a format that requires one, like Parquet.
Okay.
This means you can start getting insights from your data much faster
Right.
without waiting for that initial schema inference step to complete.
So if I'm working with a massive data set and I need to quickly filter or transform some data,
Yeah.
dynamic frames can save me a significant amount of time and compute resources.
Absolutely. And this performance advantage becomes even more pronounced
Yeah.
as the data set size grows.
Okay, that's super helpful.
It is.
It's like they've removed a major roadblock
Yes.
in the data processing pipeline.
Exactly. And this innovation is a direct result
Yeah.
of Glue's focus on solving real-world data problems and making data integration more efficient and accessible.
Right. Welcome back to the deep dive. Last time we started unpacking how AWS Glue handles data with those innovative dynamic frames.
Yeah.
But Glue isn't just about processing data. It's about making sense of it,
Right.
organizing it,
Yeah.
and making it easily accessible. And that's where the Glue data catalog and those tireless little data bots, the Glue crawlers, come in.
Ah, yes, the crawlers. They're like those robotic explorers we send to distant planets.
Right.
Except instead of searching for alien life,
Yeah.
they're mapping out your data landscape, sniffing out schemas,
Yeah.
and automatically populating the data catalog.
So for someone who's never used Glue before,
Yeah.
how do these crawlers actually work? What's the process?
Well, think of it as a three-step process.
Okay.
Listing, classification, and finalization.
Okay.
The crawler starts by taking an inventory of all the files in your data lake.
Okay, so it's like building a table of contents for your data,
Exactly.
figuring out what files are there and where they're located.
And then comes the classification stage,
Right.
where things get interesting.
All right.
The crawler needs to figure out what kind of data is in each file.
Right.
Is it a CSV, a JSON, a Parquet file?
Yeah.
And what's the schema? What are the columns? What types of data are in each column?
It's like trying to decipher ancient scrolls without a Rosetta Stone, right?
Right.
How does the crawler figure all that out?
Glue uses a collection of what they call classifiers. Think of them as specialized detectives,
All right.
each trained to recognize a specific data format.
Uh-huh.
They have classifiers for common formats like CSV, JSON, Avro, Parquet, you name it.
So it's like a forensic team for data, with each expert analyzing the file for clues about its structure and content.
Exactly. And these classifiers use a variety of techniques.
Okay.
Looking for patterns, analyzing the file's metadata,
Yeah.
even peeking into the data itself to identify the format and extract the schema.
So for some formats like Avro, it's pretty straightforward.
Right.
Because the schema is embedded in the file.
Right.
But for others like CSV or JSON,
Yeah.
it requires a bit more detective work.
Right. The classifiers might look for common delimiters,
Yeah.
analyze the first few rows,
Okay.
or even use machine learning to predict the data types.
It's amazing how much intelligence they've baked into these crawlers.
It is.
But once the crawler has scanned the files and figured out their formats and schemas,
Right.
what happens next?
That's the finalization stage.
Okay.
This is where the crawler takes all that information it's gathered
Yeah.
and starts populating the Glue data catalog.
Right.
It needs to figure out which files belong to the same table,
Uh-huh.
identify any partitions, and ensure the schemas are consistent.
Now that sounds like a tricky task,
It is.
especially when dealing with real-world data that's often messy and doesn't always follow the rules.
It is. And one of the challenges is dealing with semi-structured data,
Yeah.
like JSON,
Right.
where schemas can be fluid and variations are common.
Okay.
You don't want to create a separate table for every slight difference in the schema, right?
That would quickly become unmanageable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Glue uses a clever approach called schema similarity.
Okay.
Essentially, they compare the schemas of different files
Right.
and calculate a similarity score based on factors, like
Mhm.
the number of matching fields and data types.
So if two files have very similar schemas, even if they're not identical,
Right.
Glue might decide they belong to the same table.
Exactly. And they use a threshold value
Okay.
to determine whether the schemas are similar enough to be grouped together.
Right.
It's a way to strike a balance
Yeah.
between capturing the nuances of the data and keeping the catalog organized.
It's like those facial recognition algorithms.
Yeah.
But for data schemas,
Uh-huh.
so Glue can tell that two faces or two schemas are similar enough to be considered the same person or the same table,
Yeah.
even if there are some minor differences.
That's a great analogy. And they also use some heuristics
Okay.
based on the file paths to help identify partitions.
Right.
For example, if you have files organized into folders like year 2023, month year 1, day F5,
Yeah.
it's a pretty good indication that you're dealing with partitions.
It's like using those breadcrumbs in the file paths to navigate the data lake and understand how the data is structured.
Right.
So these crawlers are doing a lot of heavy lifting behind the scenes,
They are.
saving us a ton of time and effort in manually organizing our data.
Absolutely. But crawling a massive data lake can still take time and resources.
Sure.
So Glue offers some features to make things more efficient.
Okay.
One of those is incremental crawling.
So instead of scanning every file every time, it can just focus on the new or changed files since the last crawl.
That's right.
That makes a lot of sense.
And you can even trigger crawls automatically
Okay.
based on events like new files being added to S3.
Right.
This keeps your data catalog up to date without having to run those full crawls all the time.
It's like having a self-updating library catalog
Yeah.
that automatically adds new books as they arrive.
Right.
So no more dusty, outdated catalogs.
Exactly.
But what about those situations where the data doesn't fit neatly into any of the predefined formats?
Right.
What if I have some weird proprietary format that only my company uses?
That's where custom classifiers come in.
Okay.
Glue lets you create your own classifiers, tailored to your specific data formats and requirements.
So if I have a file format that uses some unusual delimiters or has a specific structure that's not recognized by the built-in classifiers,
Right.
I can create a custom classifier that tells Glue how to parse it.
Exactly. You can use things like regular expressions, XML tags, or even JSON paths to define the rules for extracting information from those custom formats.
It's like giving Glue a cheat sheet for your data,
Yes.
so it can quickly decipher even the most cryptic formats.
And that's not all.
Oh,
You can also use custom grouping and data transformations within the crawler
okay.
to have more control over how your metadata is organized and presented in the data catalog.
So I can group files together based on specific criteria,
Yes.
even if their schemas are slightly different.
That's right.
Or I can clean up the data as it's being crawled.
Exactly. It gives you that extra level of flexibility
Okay.
to ensure the data catalog accurately reflects your understanding of the data and how you want to use it.
So it's not just about blindly ingesting whatever the crawler finds.
Right.
I can actually shape and refine the metadata as it's being discovered.
Exactly.
That's pretty powerful. But I imagine there are some trade-offs, right?
Sure.
More flexibility usually means more complexity.
It does.
Is it difficult to set up and manage these custom features?
Well, there's definitely a learning curve, especially if you're new to Glue and data cataloging concepts.
Right.
But Glue provides a lot of documentation and examples to help you get started. And they have a pretty active community forum where you can ask questions and get help from other users.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
It's always helpful to have a community to turn to when you're learning something new.
It is.
But it sounds like these crawlers are doing a lot of work for us,
Yeah.
automatically discovering and cataloging our data. And we can even extend their capabilities with custom features.
Exactly. They're a crucial part of making data discovery and access easier and more efficient in AWS Glue.
Right. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've journeyed through the nuts and bolts of AWS Glue.
Right.
From DynamicFrames to serverless compute.
Uh-huh.
From crawlers to the data catalog.
Yeah.
And even those handy custom classifiers.
Yeah, those are cool.
But now,
Okay.
let's take a step back.
All right.
And look at the bigger picture. It's been quite a ride through the data integration landscape.
It has.
It's fascinating to see how AWS Glue has evolved over time, driven by customer needs and the ever-changing world of data.
That's right.
Exactly. And the research paper actually does a great job of reflecting on this journey. So what are some of the key takeaways they highlight?
Okay.
And what can we learn from Glue's evolution?
Well, one key takeaway
Yeah.
is the importance of focusing on a specific niche early on.
Okay.
When Glue first launched, it was primarily targeted at developers and data engineers, building data lakes and loading data warehouses.
Right.
By honing in on that specific use case, they were able to gain traction and prove the value of Glue in a targeted market.
Right.
Then, as the platform matured,
Yeah.
they could expand to a wider audience.
It's like building a solid foundation before constructing the skyscraper.
Right.
You need to make sure the base is strong before you start adding all the fancy features.
Precisely. And speaking of foundations, another crucial lesson
Okay.
is the power of a robust serverless platform.
Right.
Glue's commitment to serverless architecture has been a game changer.
It has.
Think about those innovations we discussed.
Yeah.
The Cloud Shuffle storage plugin, fast startup times, dynamic auto scaling. All of those stem from their focus on making Glue truly serverless, removing the burden of infrastructure management.
It's like they said, hey, you focus on the data, we'll handle all the plumbing.
That's right.
And that has really opened up a whole new world of possibilities for how people use Glue.
Right. We see people using it for interactive data exploration, running microbatch pipelines, even powering real-time applications.
Wow.
All without having to worry about spinning up servers or configuring clusters.
Right.
It's a testament to the flexibility and power of a well-designed serverless platform.
It's like they've democratized access to big data processing.
Yeah.
Making it accessible to more than just hardcore data engineers.
Absolutely. And we've talked a lot about Glue's technical innovations.
Yeah.
But there's another aspect that's equally important.
What's that?
It's ecosystem,
Okay.
a network of connectors
Right.
that allow Glue to interact with a vast and diverse array of data sources and services.
Because a data integration tool is only as good as its ability to connect to the data.
Exactly.
It's like having a fancy sports car with no roads to drive on.
Exactly. And they've done an incredible job of expanding that ecosystem, optimizing those core connectors for services like S3 and Redshift.
Okay.
Introducing custom connectors so you can connect to virtually anything.
Wow.
And even creating an AWS marketplace for connectors where you can find pre-built connectors for all sorts of different services.
That's pretty neat.
It's amazing to see how Glue can connect to anything and everything.
It's like they built this universal data bridge.
Yeah.
Connecting all these disparate islands of information, breaking down those data silos that we talked about earlier.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Why should you care about AWS Glue and its evolution?
Well, here are a few key takeaways. First, Glue is a testament to the power of cloud-native data integration tools.
Right.
It's designed from the ground up to be scalable, flexible, and cost-effective in the cloud, taking full advantage of the cloud's capabilities.
Okay,
Second, it demonstrates the importance of embracing the messiness of real-world data.
Okay.
Glue's features like DynamicFrames and choice types allow you to work with data as it is without forcing it into rigid, predefined structures. And third, it highlights the value of a vibrant ecosystem. Glue's connector strategy ensures that it can evolve alongside the data landscape, connecting to new and emerging data sources as they appear. They're not standing still.
So even if you're not using AWS Glue right now, these are valuable principles to keep in mind as you navigate the ever-evolving world of data integration. Think about the bigger picture. How can you build flexible, scalable, and adaptable data pipelines that can handle the challenges of tomorrow?
Absolutely. Now, the Glue team is upfront about the fact that their journey is far from over.
Right.
They're constantly iterating, innovating, and responding to customer feedback.
Which leads us to a final thought-provoking question.
Okay.
For you to ponder.
Okay.
The paper mentions Glue's support for open data lake formats.
Yeah.
Like Apache Iceberg, Apache Hudi, and Delta Lake.
Uh-huh.
These are newer formats that offer some interesting capabilities for managing and querying data in data lakes.
Yeah.
How do you think the growing popularity of these formats will shape the future of data integration tools like AWS Glue?
It's a fascinating question.
It is.
Will these formats become the new standard for data lakes?
Right.
Pushing tools like Glue to adapt and evolve their capabilities?
Yeah.
Will they lead to a more unified and interoperable data landscape? Or will they create new challenges and complexities?
Only time will tell. But one thing's for sure.
What's that?
The world of data integration is constantly in flux.
It is.
There's always something new to learn, something new to explore.
Right.
And tools like AWS Glue are at the forefront of that evolution.
And that's what makes it so exciting.
It is.
There are always new challenges to tackle, new solutions to discover.
Yeah.
And new possibilities to unlock.
So stay curious, keep experimenting, and don't be afraid to get your hands dirty with those data pipelines.
That's right.
Until next time on The Deep Dive.